I'm Yao Li. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Modeling, Simulation, and Training. And I am also a faculty member of the Cybersecurity and Privacy cluster. I joined UCF in 2019. Before that, I received my Ph.D. degree from University of California, Irvine. So my research area is privacy and human-computer interaction. So basically, I studied how users manage their privacy in their online interactions with technologies under the broader social cultural context. So one of my major research stream is about cross-cultural differences in privacy management. So I have worked on this topic for several years. So that will also be the title of my talk. My research in cross-cultural privacy differences is motivated and guided by Erwin Altman's theory. So Erwin Altman is a social psychologist. He studied offline privacy management, like how people regulate their boundaries with others in their offline social interactions. So he studied privacy in different cultures and conclude that privacy is a culturally universal concept, but the specific perception and mechanisms vary from culture to culture. So this means that people manage their privacy differently in different culture. If we want to design technologies to support users' privacy management, we have to consider such cross-cultural differences, especially where we have more and more technologies that are used at a global scale. For example, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They are not only popular in the US, but also in other parts of the world. So those companies have to consider whether their privacy design follows the culturally distinct norms, privacy norms, values, and laws. And users may also face different privacy norms, requirements, and management styles when they interact and share information with other users from different cultures. And speaking of the privacy laws, I have to mention GDPR, which is a EU legislation about data privacy. It was launched in 2016. So it changes. It has been changing the worldwide landscape of data protection laws because it not only affects the data collection in EU, but also affects beyond the borders, including any company that collects personal information from EU residents who resides outside EU. So if this is a future trend of data privacy legislation, then we will have to take such differences into when we design technologies that involves information collection. So my research aims to answer these three overarching questions. How does the fundamental conceptualization of privacy differ between cultures? So specifically, it can be like, how is a basic concept of privacy different in different cultures, and what is considered as personal or private information in different cultures, and how privacy functions differently for users in different cultures. And the second question is about the concrete and super level cross-cultural differences in privacy, such as is a level of privacy concern difference between cultures? Is the amount of information shared online different from cultures? So the first two questions are about my current work. So I'm doing several projects to answer the first two questions. And the third question is more about my future work, like how are the emerging technologies are challenged by cross-cultural privacy differences, because technologies are advancing very rapidly and they collect more and more data from users, and they are also increasingly available worldwide. So how are the cross-cultural privacy differences challenging the privacy issues in the emerging technologies? To discover the cross-cultural differences in the conceptualization of privacy, we have conducted several studies to measure some basic privacy concepts such as information disclosure, privacy concern, and strategies adoptions. But due to the time limit, I only present a example of my research. So in this particular Quandrix survey, we measured information disclosure, which is about information users shared online. So the survey was run in 3 countries, US, China, and South Korea. And we measured the information disclosure in a pretty standard ways. So one way is to just have a list of information items that users are commonly shared on social media, and ask the survey respondents whether they have shared it or not. So if you look at the second column in the table, that's all the information items we ask in the survey. So they're not, they don't represent all the possible information items, but we took them from multiple literatures and they cover the major ones. So through a exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis, we found that the underlying dimensions of this information disclosure significantly differs between the 3 countries. If you look at the US column, the first dimension, F1, has like age, gender, education, as well as friend request and relationship status. So the first group is more about like the type of information we usually put in our online profile. And the second group, F2, contains things like political views, schedules, routines, locations, and contact informations. They are more intimate personal details that, people can use these details to either virtually or physically locate the data subject. However, in China and Korea, the dimensions are quite different. Like the first dimension has like age, education, birth date, and then contact information. And the second group has things like political views, schedules, routine, and friend list, relationship status. So the first one is more about like personal details. And the second one is about, some details about social association. So, so basically the way people treat the information shared online is fundamentally different. In US, it's more about like public versus personal. So it's based on like things about intimacy. But in China and Korea, it's more about like personal and social information. So this means that the fundamental understanding of personal information is quite different from between the 3 countries. And if this fundamental understanding is different, that means the way we measure it in future studies should differ, and the way we design for personal information sharing should be different. And the next slide is about an example of my research to discover the cross-cultural differences in the levels and the mechanism of privacy. So it's another Quandrix survey in the same 3 countries. So I want to compare like the levels of privacy concerns and the mechanism by which privacy attitudes is influenced by contextual factors. So in this study, we kind of manipulate the contextual factors in Facebook friend request, such as whether the person who sends a friend request, are you in the same city with this person? Are you in the same group? Do you have mutual friends? Things like that. So we also measured like 3 different types of privacy concerns and the situational risk perception about the friend request. So if you see the table up here, it's like the levels of privacy concerns and risk perception are significantly different. So for example, information privacy concern, that's like the concern about identifiable information. That's is significantly lower in Korean. And if you look at interactional privacy concern, so that's about the concern over unwanted encounter online. So Korea and China are significantly higher. That also works for psychological privacy concern. So that's like concern about intrusions upon one's feelings and thoughts. So that's also higher in Korea and China, and risk perception is also higher in Korea and China. But if you look at the mechanism by which risk perception is influenced, if you look at the table down here, you see that all the contextual factors has much higher influence on perceived risk. But it's not in China and Korea because, you know, for example, same social media groups, same cities are not very significant in China and Korea. So basically, these findings means that the mechanism by which the contextual factors influence users' privacy attitudes differs in different countries. One practical implication can be like, you know, the design for a friend recommendation system should be differently considered in different countries because the contextual factors works differently. And the next slide is about my future plans and potential collaborations. So first, I want to explore like how much of the country differences can be explained by the culture differences, because most of my work currently are you know, country level comparison. So it can be due to other factors such as, you know, demographic differences, economics, political autonomous spheres, things like that. So I want to examine like how much of the country differences can be explained by the culture. For example, I can measure individual level culture and see how that influences privacy attitudes and behaviors, and whether this influence differs between countries. So I'm looking for potential collaborators who are interested in, you know, cross-cultural studies and social psychology. And the second direction is like I said earlier, that I want to explore the privacy challenges in emerging technologies by the cross-cultural privacy differences. So one good scenario that I come up recently is about the tourist privacy concerns in Orlando, because, you know, Orlando attracts a lot of international tourists, and also, you know, we have advanced technologies, touristic technologies in Orlando, like, you know, those mobile apps in theme parks and smart tourism technologies in those parks. So, but, you know, tourists are from different cultures. So when they come to a unfamiliar place and have to share their personal information in exchange for services, their privacy concerns may be worsened, and they may encounter different types of privacy challenges. So I want to take a cross-cultural approach to study their privacy attitudes and behaviors in the interaction with tourism technologies. So I'm looking for potential collaborators who are interested in, you know, smart technologies, smart tourism, or tourism management. So that's all about my research. I want to thank my collaborators, especially, you know, my cluster colleagues, and also, you know, my students. Thank you very much.